Okay, welcome everybody to our PAC webinar. Thank you for your attendance. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Just going to give it a second for everybody to pop in. We're right at our start time here, so just another 30 seconds to a minute. Thank you all for joining us today. We're so happy to have you, our guests here. There is a chat box down below and a questions box. Please feel free to put in any questions that you have or any comments that you have for today's presentation. Some of the questions we'll ask during the presentation, depending on time, some of them we may have to wait until the end to get all the questions answered, but please feel free to send them in. And I just want to officially welcome everybody to today's webinar from PAC. We're excited to get the 2020 webinar series going here. Today we have Annette Uda from Pet Therapy that's going to talk to us about how to keep our pet care centers as safe, clean, and healthy as possible. Before we get started here, I just want to show a little video about PAC. PAC, the Professional Animal Care Certification Council, is putting on this webinar series to help provide knowledge to our pet care community. Many of you probably already know about PAC, our third-party certification, but I am going to play this short video for those of you that might not be as familiar with PAC. Hopefully our video will go well, so let me go ahead and play it here. You may have to turn up the volume on your computers as high as it goes.
As a professional pet care provider, you assume you are good at what you do. But how can you prove to prospective clients that you have the training and skills to provide exceptional care for their pets? The Professional Animal Care Certification Council is here to change that. Independent certification is becoming essential in the pet care industry, and PAC is the not-for-profit organization that offers 3 different levels of certification. Whether you're a provider who spends most of your time hands-on with the pets, a manager, or an operator, there's an exam specially designed for you. PAC certification is how you can set yourself apart as a credible professional in the world of pet care. Validate your knowledge and expertise with certification today. The Professional Animal Care Certification Council. It's safer in a PAC.
So that is a little bit about us at PAC. We are a third-party exam. I'm going to pull up just a couple slides here. And I wanted to put up on here our next exam dates for 2020. These are also on our website if you'd like to visit there. Our next registration deadline is February 15th. If you wanted to take that PAC exam, you will register by February 15th. Do your studying and take that exam mid-March to the end of March. Then we have some June dates and some November dates. We just got the results of our previous exam cycle, and we're so excited. We had 44 new PAC certifications come through with this last exam cycle, and so we are just growing so fast here at PAC, and we're so excited. So many have taken that step to become independently certified, to give pet parents that sense of security that they want to feel. If you do decide to take the exam, we have some fantastic study groups that we started last year, so you can really get in to be a part of the community. There's a study group for the provider level, a study group for the manager level, and a study group for the owner level. So you'll have other people that you can study with. There's a moderator in there to lead things for you. So lots of great things happening on those Facebook study groups. If you need information on the Facebook study groups or anything else related to PAC, There is our email down there. You can also just go to our website and push contact us if that's easier. Keep in mind with that email address, it's just 2 C's in there. So info@paccert.org. Finally, I am happy to report that today's class is for a CEU credit, and we will provide that credit registration number sometime during the presentation. So stay tuned for that. Next, we would like to welcome Annette Uda, who has graciously joined us today to talk to us more about health and safety in the pet care community. So welcome, Annette, and I am going to pass my screen over to Annette, and we'll get her set up. And we'll get moving there. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or the questions box. Okay, Annette, I've passed that over to you. Okay, Annette, I'm
here. Can you hear me?
Yep, and I can hear you. So go ahead and get started.
Okay, great. Well, everyone, thank you so much for attending today. I appreciate your patience, as I know this was a rescheduled program. We've worked out all the bugs, so we should be good to go. So to give you a little bit of information, I just want to promise you that while this is a PowerPoint and a webinar, I'm going to do my best not to make it a death by PowerPoint. So to get started, I know pathogens is not a very sexy topic, but we're going to try to make it as fun and entertaining as well as informative to help you protect your business. So for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Annette Uda. I'm the founder and president of PetArapy. Our company has been in business for over 11 years. This is the founder, actually, of our company. This is Tasha. Tasha was my Shih Tzu that I had about 11 years ago, 12 years ago. We started working with our veterinarian because Tasha suffered from severe environmental allergies. I have not always been in the animal care industry. However, I've always loved animals. So Tasha was a Shih Tzu that had been to the doctor multiple times, probably about 6 times in any one given year, going in because of atopic dermatitis, having scratching, itching, watery eyes. She was really suffering severely because of the indoor environment. I kept asking my veterinarian what I could do to help her to become more comfortable and not to have to watch her suffer. So if any of you out there have ever seen an animal that has atopic dermatitis or pedicopy, it's a very odor problem. She smelled really bad, but not only that, she suffered quite a bit. And I know it was really hard for me to watch her suffer. So after going to the doctor many times, multiple times, I asked the doctor if there was anything I could do to help with her environment, because I knew that she didn't have any issues with food allergies. It was all because of the environment, but my house I felt was a very clean environment. However, the doctor told me if I could remove the source of the problem, I could get rid of the problem. So I took that as a challenge. I accepted it, and that's where PetArapy was born. I started finding out that actually indoor air quality was a lot worse than what I had ever imagined. If you all remember, back in 1973, they had started a movement trying to get tighter air quality, or tighter buildings, if you will, so there would be no air leakage to get more energy efficiency in buildings. And so by doing that, they were able to close everything up and have more energy efficient. Sounds fantastic. Problem is now we're all breathing the same air that's coming in and recirculating day in and day out. So while it helped us with our energy savings, it did not help us with our health. Fast forward 10 years, now the World Health Organization had issued a new syndrome called sick building syndrome, meaning that because we were constantly breathing in the same air quality, the problem was now we're breathing in viruses, mold, bacteria, anything that's circulating in our home. So what I really want to do is to focus in on the pathogens to help you have a better understanding of them, because I think that once we understand what pathogens we're dealing with within our facilities, then we can actually address them, attack them, and hopefully get them under control. Because the primary thing we want to do is make sure they don't spread. So to understand a little bit more about viruses, I'm sure you've heard of canine influenza. There's various canine cough. That one is also an issue when it comes to virus pathogens spreading. But viruses actually cannot duplicate themselves. meaning that a virus has to come in from outside and enter the host, meaning the animal or even ourselves. Once the virus enters our body, then as you can see, they can actually make multiple copies of themselves. So basically, it's like a photocopy that's able to spit out thousands at a time of having these viruses infect our bodies. Bacteria. Bacteria is another one that can actually not need a host. It can actually start to grow rapidly within itself, but actually one single tiny minute piece of bacteria can actually multiply into like hundreds of thousands within just a few hours. So mold. So mold, as you know, I'm sure you've seen in your home too, if you have like a piece of bread that is sitting on the counter, after a while, it'll start to grow mold. Mold is everywhere in the environment. Mold is going to be everything that you're breathing in, whether it's outside or inside. It's aerosolized and it does transmit. Problem is that once it lands on the surface, it can start to grow. Fungus or ringworm, some of you may be working with them as far as like doing grooming. So when it comes to fungus, the problem is that with these spores, as they're aerosolizing, they can land on their subject and then they can start to spread the infection between humans and animals. So now that we're understanding a little bit more about that, we want to talk about the modes of transmission. This is where we're going to get into the meat of the whole presentation. So we want to know how are pathogens spreading. So the problem is that pathogens can spread in a building through the ventilation system in your HVAC system, a ceiling fan that can be circulating in the air. You can carry it in your clothing, your hands, your shoes, an open door, or even just by walking by because of natural air currents. So respiratory infections, they have different modes of transmission. We have airborne transmission, direct contact, and fomite. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the word fomite, fomite is going to be more of your tangibles, kind of like your blankets, your toys, your bowls, leashes, collars, anything that is tangible that can be transferring. What we're going to focus on more today is about the airborne transmission route, because the airborne transmission route, these pathogens actually go directly into the lungs. So as you can see here, we have infection that is going to be from airborne droplets, droplet nuclei, recirculating the air, direct contact, fomite. All of these pathogens can end up being interrelated to where they can transmit because of one or more of these reasons. But I want to focus on the airborne droplets and droplet nuclei. That's something that's been very confusing for people, and I really want to make sure that you understand this. There's two routes of airborne transmission. You have large droplets and even smaller droplets that are 10 microns or larger in size. The reason that's important is because when an animal were to cough, shed, sneeze, or pant, those pathogens will go out to so many feet and drop to the ground. That's why surface cleaning is so critical, and you have to get that done. When it comes to droplet nuclei, this is another airborne transmission, but actually when you look at the word aerosolization or Google it, you're going to see what it means is that it remains aerosolized. It does not come out of the air. So that means that when an animal is coughing, sneezing, panting, shedding, all of those small particles are released into the air. Some of them fall to the ground. The majority of them remain infective and aerosolized for up to 2 weeks. Why do we care about droplet nuclei and the sizes of them? Because as we've seen in the previous screen, when you have 10 microns or larger, it falls to the surfaces, we clean them up, they're good to go. When you've got a pathogen that's so tiny, 5 microns or less, that's what remains aerosolized, infective, and can end up wreaking havoc on your building. But if you look at these pathogens on the side, like influenza, parvo, bordetella, which is also canine cough, distemper, even dander, if you look at those on the right side, you're going to see that all of them are under 1 micron in size, with the exception of animal dander. So animal dander is generally between 2.5 to 3 microns in size. So if you're always wondering why in the world I'm cleaning like a crazy person, but I can't seem to get this infection under control, because if we're not treating the air, we're not getting rid of the problem. So what does that look like in size? If you remember when I said 10 microns or larger falls to the ground, well, here's what's happening whenever you have the microns that are anywhere from like 1 to 10 microns. It goes into the lungs and the alveoli of the animals. So meaning that once it gets into the lungs, you can't really get it out. Once it's in there, it's infecting the animal. And remember, as I showed you, with the virus duplication, you're getting those viruses that are making copies of themselves so dramatically and so rapidly that now it's taken over the entire animal. So to give you a visual, I hope this is working. I'm trying to get this to work last time. But as you can see, when, I don't have anything with an animal, but with a human, when they cough and sneeze, the pathogen is expelled. It goes into the air. The pathogen itself will release, and it actually will wait for its next host to inhale it. And now we have an infection. So that video I just showed you, the reason you have this one instead of an animal or even having a different one is because when I had started looking for videos online, they really don't have anything that shows animals transmission disease. So this is the next best one I had. Some of you may remember the H1N1 virus that was going around. I wanted to show you what a microscopic image of the H1N1 virus actually looked like. In Chicago, we had an outbreak not too long ago as far as the measles epidemic. I don't know if you've had it in your areas where you are, but the measles were so infected that when I was walking through the store, I found this and it stopped me in my tracks. But I thought this was good to share because as you can see, with measles, we don't really think about it spreading through the air. We think a lot about contact, but when it's spreading through the air, it can actually make everyone sick. That's why they're asking everyone to cover their mouth. So like for you and I, if we walk into an urgent care or the hospital because we're sick, generally we're going to see masks and we're going to see gloves and tissues. They're doing everything they can to try to control the environment. But as we know very well, there's no way to put a mask on an animal. So we're going to end up having these things aerosolized regardless or just by default. So when we talk about air cleaning and it's not an option, the reason is that if any of us in the morning decided to wake up, the first thing I do is grab my toothbrush. So I'm brushing the bottom of my teeth, but if I just brush the bottom of my teeth and my tongue, but forgot to brush the top of my teeth, it's not really clean. So it's almost the same analogy. If you're cleaning your surfaces, but you're not cleaning the air, you're really not having a clean environment. So what we talk about doing is really preparing. So if we can end up, for right now, if we're not planning on having an issue because everything looks rosy and everything's fine, the problem is that if we're not planning, we can't really control the pathogens and we have a high risk. But if we plan in advance before something happens, then we can reduce the risk of our pathogens. I hope that makes sense. So what I want to talk to you about is a little bit more of air cleaning technologies. I am going a little bit rapidly and I'm more than happy to have anybody open up with questions if they have any. So we're here. So the first line of defense that generally people talk about is going to be MERV-rated filters or filters. So to give you a little bit of background about what a filter does, you may have your HVAC technician or somebody to come in and change your filters for you. And as you may know, there's various prices and you wonder why is there such a huge difference? Well, disposable filters are anywhere from 1 to 4 MERV rating. MERV rating is what the HVAC industry will give it. It's talking about minimum efficiency reporting value. What we generally look at is to find out what are we trying to trap, because these filters will not kill anything. They're just trapping particles. So the main reason that filters were even invented was because with HVAC systems, you want to capture any debris that's going through the ventilation system so it doesn't impact or impede anything on your equipment. So the problem is that the higher the MERV rating, the tighter the weave. So what we want to look at is to find out where is the good balance for animal care industry. Because as we all know, trying to change a filter once a week is going to be a little bit hard to do, especially because of the fact that they can be cost prohibitive, but also these filters do clog up pretty readily. So we want to find that sweet spot where we need to be for animal care. So if you look at the filters, the MERV rating, again, as I mentioned, the higher the MERV, the more captured particles that are captured. I want to also talk about HEPA filters. HEPA filters are great, and then they're also not very good in animal health. Reason being is because HEPA filters are great at trapping tinier particles at the tinier micron sizes. The problem is they can only trap up to 0.3 microns in size, but as you remember by the previous screens, if you get to 0.1 microns in size, they're going to fly right through anyway. So what you're trying to do is to capture the viruses, but you can't do that with a HEPA filter anyway. But in saying that, when you have a HEPA filter in place, The problem is that while it's trapping the particles, including mold, it can actually have the mold growing on the filter itself. And then when the particles start to become, I guess, small enough, they will start to, they'll go through the filter and now aerosolize in your building. So really, I don't recommend HEPA filters in animal care. Number one, they're extremely expensive. Second reason is that they're not going to trap viruses that you're looking for, but they're also going to be very expensive, and they can actually release more mold spores into the air, causing another issue. Another thing you want to do is make sure that you're not exceeding the filter ratings that your HVAC system calls for. A lot of times I get a call saying, well, we do a MERV 11 filter. Will that be good enough? The problem is that we don't know what your HVAC system calls for, because you have to remember that you got that air blowing through so fast that you've got to make sure that your unit is not being hindered by airflow. Because if you hinder it, then that's why no buildings have in the ventilation system a HEPA filter. Because if it has too much air going through and you can't get the air moving because the filter is too tight, then you're going to have to end up running your facility or your HVAC system. So what we do recommend is a MERV 8, and the reason we recommend MERV 8 is for a couple of reasons. One, it's going to be a little bit more cost effective. We really don't want to get a disposable filter because we still do want to trap dander particles. If we can trap the dander, the good thing is that now we're going to be able to minimize somewhat of the disease transmission. So I really do recommend doing a MERV 8, and I think that this would probably be sufficient for any animal care facility. So we're talking about other air cleaning technology and what's safe. We want to look at what is safe for humans as well as animals, because what's good for us may not necessarily be good for our animals. So for instance, I'm sure we're all aware of the fact that when it comes to chocolate or avocados or garlic or even onions, we know that that can be very harmful and toxic to these animals. So what does this have to do with air cleaning? We're about to find out. So some of you may or may not be very familiar with ozone. Ozone is actually allowed by the FDA to be at 0.5 parts per million. That means that as long as you're not exceeding those limits, then the government's okay with you having something. Now the downside of that is, like the government said, the amount of ozone that's needed to actually kill viruses and clean the air is going to far exceed the amounts they would ever agree to. So then why do people use ozone? Because it helps with odor. Problem is that even the amounts of ozone that's listed at 0.5 parts per million, it can be extremely harmful to the animals. So I do a lot of research and I do a lot of studies, and I found that even at 0.5 parts per million, even at 0.1 part per million, we were finding that, as we showed earlier, the alveoli of the lung, it starts to deteriorate and hurt the animal's lungs. So if you're housing these animals for any prolonged period of time or boarders overnight, the problem is that for the length of that they're being exposed to it, over time, you can really start to do detrimental harm to their health. So we really want to stay away from anything that can create ozone, either intentionally or as a byproduct. So what do I mean by that? So obviously we all know ozone generators. That's one thing, and it might list on the box, yes, it creates ozone. Second thing, and this is the tricky part, is sometimes it does not create ozone in itself. But once it turns on and the longer the unit's running, then ozone starts to become created. So that's why you really want to be careful when you're getting any kind of animal or any kind of air cleaning technology. You want to ask, does it create ozone at any amount, intentionally or unintentionally? Then you also have ionization. Ionization, this is an interesting one. So ions, some people are asking me which ones are good, the positive or the negative. The bottom line is that when you have an ion, it's like an electrical charge that's going out. When you have an electrical charge going out to capture these pathogens, or dust, if you will, it's actually going to attach to the ions, that the particles will drop to the ground, but the percentage of the kill rate that you're actually killing these pathogens are extremely low, and it would take a long period of time. So why does that matter? Well, the problem is that if you have all these pathogens dropping to the ground, two problems. Number one, you haven't killed them all. The animals are walking by, we're walking by, and they re-aerosolize. If they re-aerosolize, then we really defeated the purpose. So again, any study that I've seen with ionization has always shown very low numbers of pathogens along with long kill rate times. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. PCO cleaners. So that's photocatalytic oxidation. These are really good to have as far as destroying any kind of odors or VOCs. But a lot of people have made the comment that it can end up killing pathogens or removing pathogens. Actually, they're not very good at removing particles at all. We don't use them in our technology only because of the fact that PCO, while it's great for VOC and odor, it's really not going to do anything to get rid of the pathogens that are aerosolizing. The next one, ERV, those are energy recovery units. So you may have heard that some people want to use 100% outside air. I want to really use caution on this. Now, not everybody's building new, but for some that are thinking about doing that, the problem with 100% outside air is, number one, it sounds great in theory. What I mean by that is that if you have 100% outside air, the problem is that the minute you get that next electrical bill, you're going to be reducing from 100% probably down to 30% because it's extremely expensive. It's like opening your windows and doors in the summer months or the winter months and letting all that air come into your home. It costs a lot to get that to balance out temperature wise. So we really don't recommend that. But also the problem is that when you have 100% outside air, you still have to deal with the fact that you might have air circulation problems. If you can't get all that air to purge out because you've got blockages because of cages, whatever it may be, then you're still going to have diseases staying in your building. You have to move that air to get all those pathogens out. So personally, I do like outside air, but I think that anybody considering to put in ERV units should definitely attach ductwork to it so that this way you can clean the air and still reduce the percentage that you have, and so you can have the benefits of the best of both worlds, if you will. The next one would be portable air cleaners. So some of you may know that, yes, Pet Therapy does have a portable air purifier. But let me just make this very clear. The reason that we have a portable air cleaner was for residential use with only a family having a few animals that would make it more comfortable for the animal, if you will. Why do I say that? Because the problem is that we have to talk about pathogen load. As I mentioned before, when an animal coughs, sneezes, pants, shakes, they're releasing particles into the air, or germs, if you will. The number of particles that are released in the air are so huge. So for instance, if you have an animal that sneezes, one sneeze can release over 100,000 particles. Out of that 100,000 particles in one sneeze, we're still not taking into account, you also have the shedding and also the coughing and panting. So why does that matter? Well, if you can imagine a room full of smoke, if you come in, you have to make sure that you're taking all of that smoke out of the room before you're able to clean that room. So if you have a portable air purifier, you need to find out, I guess, how many air exchanges it has per hour and in what size room. So for an animal care facility, I really do not recommend it unless you have a very small room that you're trying to treat 1 or 2 animals. So I just want to bring that to your attention because I know a lot of people think that because they have an air purifier, they're safe, but actually it's not going to match the size that you need to really get disease under control. Again, it's going to depend on the size of your room as well. So ultraviolet germicidal radiation. So UVGI has been used in human healthcare for over 100 years. Now it's important to note, and I put this here, that the above technology works together. So what I'm saying by that is sometimes people will use some ozone with ionization or portable air cleaners or UV with ionization. So there's a different combination that people may try to use, but you just, again, want to go back to asking, does it create ozone even in small parts per million intentionally or as a byproduct? So that's important to remember.
Annette?
Yes.
We do have a question related to this that came in. Are you familiar with the molecule air purifier? And if so, could you address that?
Yes, I actually have read up on it and I'm very impressed with it. I like it a lot. Again, now we're going to go back to the same spot, the same point, is that what are we trying to do, a room, or are we trying to do a whole building? So when it comes to that unit, you just really want to be able to make sure you've got the pathogen load to be able to reduce the actual pathogens that are in the room with the size that it offers. So again, I know they have a couple of different options and units. I just don't really have in front of me right now the information as far as how many air exchanges per hour, nor do I know how many pathogens that it claims to kill in a certain amount of time.
Got it.
So
Thank you.
So we're going to talk again about today is going to be about UVGI. The reason we're focusing on UVGI is because this has been a proven technology that's used for over 100 years in government facilities and also hospitals. It's come up showing that it's got a 99% kill rate, and so that's why we're focusing on this. But for people who are not familiar with UVGI, UVGI is an ultraviolet germicidal radiation. That's the term that's used by the federal government. So basically, again, it's been used to prevent or to reduce any kind of infectious disease transmission. People have asked me before, what does it look like? Well, I guess the question is, what are you trying to accomplish? So are you looking for an upper air unit for a smaller room? Are you looking for mobile transport? Are you looking for whole buildings, surfaces? So there's just different UV that's out there for what you're looking to use it for. So how UV actually works, if you can imagine that when the pathogens enter the room, what we want to do is get that UV light to be able to penetrate through the pathogen, break up the DNA. Once the DNA is broken, it's rendered harmless. It won't be able to reinfect anything at that point. So UVGI and what to choose. So another thing that's important too, and we kind of going back to the earlier question. So airflow and CFMs must be taken into consideration. So we want to know how fast is the air moving. So we want to make sure that the greater the airflow, then that's going to be as far as having higher air circulation. So when we have the air circulation and airflow, they're two separate things, but they work hand in hand. So you can have enough air circulating through a building, but it doesn't mean it's actually circulating through and being able to capture all those dead zones, if you will. So you want to make sure that you've got good airflow and air circulation working together as a combination. Again, we talked a little bit about the pathogen load potential. Again, the higher number of animals, the greater risk, because if you have one animal with over 100,000 particles in a sneeze, how many more so do you have if you have 5, 6, 7 sneezes within a 3-hour period? Plus, remember, those, if it's a bacterial like canine cough, you don't necessarily have to wait for this to enter a host to start to duplicate itself. It can start to duplicate it on its own. And you're talking also, we want to look at what type of animals are being cared for. If you have anywhere from pocket pets to primates, you just need to find out what type of animals are being housed together and how much you're trying to reduce the air quality, or how much you're trying to increase the air quality with the number of animals you have. We also have to look at humidity levels, and unfortunately, or fortunately, humidity levels are something that we're not going to get away from, especially in our industry, because there's such, we have to introduce water at all times, whether it's bathing or whether it's going to be just cleaning, if you will. So we always want to, we're always going to have humidity levels regardless. We also want to look at the floor plan, what's going to be the best option for our equipment we choose. We want to look at the HVAC equipment we have. Sometimes people don't have an HVAC equipment. So that what I mean by that is that people have doors that just open up and they just want the air to naturally ventilate and flow through. Problem is that even if you have the garage door type openers, that air that comes in is not going to purge out. It's going to constantly circulate. So it's kind of like seeing something constantly moving in a rotation form. Just because you have the doors open, you're bringing more in, and some may escape, but those pathogens will still remain under the roof. You really want to look at your return supplies and vents as well. Do you have enough return air and supply vents to be able to get the air circulated and moving properly? Because remember, when you're working into an animal care facility, this is nothing compared to human healthcare. So what I mean by that is ASHRAE sets the standards for all of the HVAC technicians, and if you will, and the mechanical engineers. So ASHRAE's study standard 62.1, that one is exclusively for residential, and they've even stated that this is not for animal health. So it's important to know that what you would normally do for a ventilation system in an animal facility is not the same as a human facility. So that's why we say that there's one, UV is not a one size fits all. There's so many things that have to be taken into consideration. Not every facility is it going to be cookie cutter, and nor are they going to be designed the same way. So what it was really important to know is that there's a lot of things that are out in the industry and people can say things, but you want to go past the marketing. You want to be able to look at what is truly happening. So what I mean by that is sometimes I've heard it's like, you know, is it true that UV kills 99% of airborne pathogens in the air? Yes, that's true. But what it's truly saying is that you have to make contact with the pathogen in order to get those high kill rates, and you have to make sure that you've got the proper equipment. because this is what they end up saying in print, is that it will start to, they will help to prevent distribution of airborne pathogens, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're killing everything. So that's why I use the analogy of the dog sitting here. The dog may be extremely hot, his whole body may be hot, and you put a fan in front of his face, yes, his face will be cooled off, but what about the rest of him? So what we're saying is that, yes, sometimes people will use UV saying it kills 99% of pathogens, but what they're truly saying is within an HVAC system, they may only be killing 30% of the pathogens in one air pass, because with UV to be effective, you need contact, intensity, and dwell time. So here's a better analogy of what I was trying to say. So water filtration plants use UV to be able to purify our water for drinking. We have to make sure that we're not drinking something that's going to make us sick. So a lot of times people who are familiar with fish tanks will use UV. But if you look at the upper right-hand corner, there's a UV system that goes into a tank, and it's great for a 10-gallon tank. But I can promise you that the strength of that UV system going into a water filtration plant, you will never want to drink that water. It will not be clean enough, and it'll make you sick. So you've got to have the proper dosage and the proper amount if you want to make sure it's going to be effective for what you're looking to do. And so here's another thing I want to mention as far as surface cleaning with UV. So there are UV surface cleaners as well. The problem is that a lot of people are under the impression that if you have a UV system that you buy or a surface cleaner and you put it in your facility, you're done and over with. But the problem is that you have to still clean your facility first and then use the UV system. Because what happens is that UV can only kill what it can touch. And so the problem is that if you have feces or anything else on the ground, or if you're in an environment where a parvo might be entering, you have to make sure you're removing the debris, the hair, the waste, and then you want to be able to clean like you normally should, and then you bring in the UV sanitizer, and that depending on what size room it is, then you have the timer that you set on it, and then you know that you're going to get those high kill rates in a matter of minutes. It could be shorter, it just depends on the size of your facility. But we always say it's an insurance policy. So if you still have to clean anyway, why would you bother wanting to use this? Because the problem is that when you have influenza or you have parvo or you have ringworm, the problem is that if you don't remove all of the pathogens, the problem is that they can end up duplicating again. And not only that, it just takes a small amount to infect an entire facility. So you really want to be able to come in and get those areas that may have been missed. There's also coil cleaning with UV. And the reason I'm bringing up the surface and the air and the coils is because the problem is that, as I showed earlier, is that when somebody says they have UV into an HVAC system, what is their purpose? Are they doing it for air cleaning or are they doing it for coil cleaning? What is the difference? Well, when everybody has an HVAC system or a furnace, if you will, inside their furnace, they have cooling coils. All you need to have for a mold to grow into a coil is to have a dark, damp place. When you have a dark, damp area, what happens is that mold will start to grow. As it grows, now it's going to start dispersing into your facility. But not only that, now you're going to have pressure drop, meaning that your facility is going to be using a lot more energy to be able to try to push the air to go through. So most times people are using coil cleaning with UV, meaning that you have a low amount of UV that's needed, but you put it in the HVAC system and then it will start to clean the coils naturally. So it's a great energy savings and it's wonderful. This is not something I would recommend as far as the sizing to be able to reduce airborne disease transmission, but it's fantastic to reduce any kind of microbial or biofilm on the coils. So when you're looking to see what you're wanting to choose, you want to make sure that you're working with somebody who can properly size your facility. So you want to make sure it's going to be effective. If you are going to be putting in a small, well, let's just use the air purifier again. So if you have an air purifier in a 3,000 square foot facility, the chances of you cleaning that facility are extremely minute. Because remember, you have got pathogens constantly being introduced into the environment. It's not something that you can just put in and let everything go away, because in about 5 seconds, you're going to have another 100,000 particles going back in the air. So you want to make sure that you've got the proper system for your facility to be able to stay on top of these pathogens so you can keep the number of the pathogens reduced. Because, you know, it's just like if you and I are talking and I have a cold, the chances of you getting sick are pretty low. However, if we're in a small room, or if I continue to cough and sneeze, not covering my mouth, which that would never happen, but let's just say what if. The problem is that now you've got so many particles in the air that the chances of you getting sick now are extremely high. That's why we try using masks, covering our mouths, trying to reduce that pathogen. So our bodies can handle so many pathogens without getting sick. And the same is true with our animals. So the more we can reduce the percentage of pathogens, the less likely the chance of the animals becoming sick or transmitting throughout the facility. So going on to that, when we talk about off-the-shelf systems, everybody's got a guy. What I mean by that is that they say, well, we've got somebody that has UV. Well, that's great. The problem is that going to be the right strength, and was it properly sized for your facility? Because remember, we talked about airflow and CFMs. The problem is that you need to have enough intensity, contact, and dwell time. So when that air is going through, you have less than a second to kill all those pathogens off so it doesn't transmit disease. So you want to make sure that you're always working with somebody who knows exactly what you're dealing with your facility. And you also want to make sure that they know about animal health and also that they're familiar with how much germicidal energy is needed. So, and again, I'm available for conversation as well after the webinar. I'm trying to go through this so I can have enough time for everybody to ask questions. But I also wanted to move on now for filters again. I am recommending a MERV 8 filter. We're recommending this not just because of thinking this is what I just thought was a good idea. We're recommending it based on removing environmental bacterial and fungal spores and also your mold spores. And so if you know Scott Learned, he's actually an animal care expert, mechanical engineer expert in the animal care industry. And he has also written white papers showing that MERV 8 filters are the best ones to get. And then before I move on from the filters, folks, I'm telling you, it's really critical though to make sure that you're staying on top of filter changes. When it starts to become plugged up or dirty, it's time to change it. And I know it can be a pain, but the problem is if you don't change it, it's going to cost you a lot more in the long run, because the more that you're hindering that airflow, the more damage you could be making to your HVAC system, and it's also going to run up your energy bill. So it's really important to make sure that those filters are cleaned out continually. So again, you want to ask questions. So what I mean by that is ask for people's studies. You know, I have a lot of respect for people that are out there doing the air cleaning technologies. If they're running studies, know what you're getting into. You know, find out let me see your studies. You don't want to go on somebody else saying, well, you know, so-and-so said that they can kill 99% of pathogens. Well, that's great. So for instance, yes, UV can kill 99% of the pathogens, but what does yours do? So meaning, where are your studies? Do you know how to achieve those levels? When it comes to even like a filter, you know, are you removing particles? How many are you removing? How do you know you have that? What studies have been shown? So I really do emphasize that studies are critical, because this is your business. You know, I can stand here and tell you things all day long, but at the end of the day, what you purchase and you bring in, it could only cost you $40 or cost you $400. But either way, if you bring it in and it's not effective, you've thrown that money away. So make sure you know what you're getting before you actually want to make that purchase. Again, it's really vital and critical, and I have everything I'm telling you, I have studies that back this up like crazy. But when anything produces ozone intentionally or as a byproduct, make sure that you do not put it into your facility. Why do I say that? Because there's a lot of people saying that ozone is generated by photocopies, or they've got, you know, other things have ozone in them. Well, it's true, and they're right. So photocopiers can produce ozone. But my question to you is, if you are only allowed to have 0.5 parts per million in your building for health reasons, why in the world would you ever bring in another additional air cleaner on top of that to exceed those limits that were ever recommended? Because remember, ozone levels, there's nothing good about ozone, period. So you want to make sure that you're staying away from it as much as possible. And then the next one is talking about how are they sizing your facility. So you're not a one size fits all. Some facilities are larger than others. Some facilities are taking multiple species animals. Some people are just taking dogs. You want to make sure that you are working with somebody that knows your environment. Product warranties, you want to find out. I mean, when you purchase that unit, are they walking away from you, or are they basically there for you and working with you? So you want to make sure that when you're having a product warranty that you're able to make you have it. So like, for instance, we have a 5-year warranty on all of our products. So you want to make sure that you're protected that way as well. Guarantee no outbreaks. This is a good one. Any company you work with, ask them, can you guarantee once we install your equipment, will we no longer have any outbreaks? My answer, if you install my equipment, is absolutely, absolutely not. Nobody can guarantee not having an outbreak. The problem is that there's so many different transmission routes But the thing is that if you're not taking protective measures to cleaning the air and the surfaces, then you're going to end up having an outbreak regardless. So what you want to do is minimize that outbreak. So again, we want to make sure that nobody's guaranteeing you that, because it's not going to be, it's not true. It's not possible. Again, even vaccinations, they're wonderful if you choose to go that route, but the problem is that they're not a foolproof, and there's still a chance you can have somebody get sick. So going on as far as maintenance, you want to ask somebody, what's the maintenance of your product? I mean, how much is it going to cost us for replacement parts? And you also want to be aware of what is required for the maintenance. And then you also want to ask them, how involved are they in the animal care industry? Again, I cannot stress this enough. Animal care industry is not the same as the human health care. So you have to make sure you're working with somebody that knows your environment and that can help you, because again, pathogen load is critical. If you don't reduce the percentage of the pathogens that are in the air, you're not going to be able to reduce the sickness. Same thing can be said with surface cleaners. So you want to make sure that you're staying on top of what people are familiar with and that they can help you. So we talked about studies. So PetTherapy has done as many studies as we can possibly do. We ended up doing a Petri dish. Now, one thing that's really important to know about this too, viruses, when you use any kind of Petri dish, two things are happening. One, you cannot capture a virus and have it grow into a Petri dish. It just doesn't happen because, again, remember, you need a host. Now, bacteria, mold, fungus, that you can put into a Petri dish and find out what are your particle counts and then what is it after. So this is one we did. It was in an animal shelter, and it was in the quarantine room prior to, and then that was the results after installing our equipment. We've had studies that have been done with the EPA-approved laboratory showing that we can kill these pathogens off within less than 60 seconds, and that's on surfaces. We're very proud of this. We actually went into a study with the University of Arizona, as well as a study with the Arizona Humane Society. So these two studies I showed you earlier, we did the Petri dish showing the particle removal. Then I showed you the surface removal rate as far as the studies. The reason we're so proud of this is because this is actually going into the University of Arizona showing that we were able to reduce, well, I guess putting our money where our mouth is. So when we go in, if anybody's familiar with studies, you basically walk in, hand them your equipment, tell them what you think is the best setup for it, and then you walk away and you just wait for the results. There's nobody that's going to be able to influence anything, especially in these trials of these studies. So when we actually got the results back, we found that as far as mocking in an HVAC system, that we were able to reduce pathogens that you're concerned with, whether it's distemper, Bordetella, herpes virus, whatever it may be, that we were able to reduce these pathogens in one air pass at a very high kill rate. The second thing that we did is, okay, fine. So we've done our Petri dish, we've done our surface, we've done our air, but what about real life? Because remember, we talked about the pathogen load. So everything was in a controlled environment before. What we ended up doing is in the University of Arizona, the Humane Society of Arizona, we did a 3-year field study where we ended up installing our equipment. And after 3 years, they found that we were able to reduce URI by 87.3%. That's tremendous. And if any of you work with felines, you hands down know that with felines, when their stress level goes up and their immune system goes down, they're going to be sick. They're very sensitive animals. Love them to death. I had a little girl named Max. I loved her. But anyway, kids are very vulnerable to infection and also to any kind of disease transmission. So anyway, we were very proud of the fact that we were able to do these studies and be able to show that we know what we're doing. But what we're really happy about is the fact that we've submitted both of these studies to the AVMA, which is the American Veterinary Medical Association. And after they did the peer review and they asked the questions, they finally notified us that both studies will now be appearing in their journals. So we were very happy about that. The main thing we're really happy about is because of the fact that now we're making a difference in this industry. We want to make sure we're getting those standards up and that you're protected. Because again, if you're not protecting your facility and you have an outbreak, you've done everything you can do, you don't understand what's happening. If we just don't want to have anybody shutting their doors or having to worry about having any kind of outbreaks and losing your reputation and also your revenue. So again, as we talked earlier, we don't want to consider a one-pronged approach. If you still, again, vaccines is kind of a subject where some people are pro and some are against, but if you are looking at vaccine protocols, also cleaning the air, also cleaning surfaces and cleaning the fomite transmission or your other tangibles, you have a winner right here in your hands. Can an animal get sick after this? Yes, but at least at this point, you've done everything you can to mitigate disease transmission and to keep your environment as healthy and as safe as you possibly can. So again, we talked about being able to go through all these different technologies. If you look on the upper right-hand corner, the reason I put that picture there and also my other picture is because I've gone by so many billboards where I've seen somebody who has put their picture out 10 years later, you look at them and they're like, that doesn't look like you. So anyway, this was my sweet Tasha. The reason I brought her picture back up, and if I can get back and explain to you why this business is so critical for me or why it's so emotional. We lost Tasha. Because of all, sorry, kind of get choked up. Because of the indoor environment.
You can do it.
Thank you, I need that. Okay, so anyway, Tasha, as I mentioned, she was the light of my life. I just loved that baby to no end. I had actually had a different business I was working in. Tasha was at my desk every single day. We worked together, went to everywhere together. Problem was that when I took her to the doctor, I was so happy because we finally found a solution to get rid of her allergies. We ended up investing into PetTherapy. We put our product into our home. I wanted to make sure it was going to be safe for her. And when we did, at that time, it wasn't PetTherapy. It was just more of an idea of what could we do to help her. But we ended up taking her to the doctor. The doctor actually thought we found a different veterinarian because she hadn't seen her in several months. When I brought her in, she had asked me, well, what did you do? She's like, this dog is great. There's no allergies. We haven't seen her. So I told her what I was doing. I was so happy. We finally found the solution. And then during her wellness exam, the doctor found that she had dilated cardiomyopathy. So because of all the shots she was given, all these years later, we found out that we were going to lose her. So problem is that had I known about being able to clean the air before, we could have kept her with us a lot longer. So I made the vow and the promise at that point that I was taking on PetTherapy and we were going to make this available to everybody and anybody we know. And we are going to do everything we can to protect, even if it's just one more pet. So again, yes, this is very passionate for me. This is not just a job for me. And that's why studies are so critical and why I'm wanting so desperately to protect your facility and the animals in your care, because nothing can replace the animals that we lose. But by means of doing what we're doing every day, we can make it a healthier environment for everyone. So anyway, I'm here for you. I will answer any questions you may have either today or if you want to reach out to me a little bit later. But anyway, I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to talk to me. It's a little bit different doing a webinar than a live class, but hopefully down the road, if I see you in class, please come up and introduce yourselves to me. If I can, right at the very end, I do want to bring this point out. Again, because I do work a lot I work with the CDCs a lot, and I work with One Health, and I'm also working with different people within the industry who are making laws. Folks, if you've ever heard of IBPSA, I would recommend highly that you become a member with them. If nothing else, let me tell you why, because I think the rate is about $300 a year. I do not work for them. I am not getting paid a dime for them. The reason I'm advocating for that is because of the fact that they stay on top of any kind of new laws coming out. They stay on top of what's transmitting in your area, and they're there to help you to protect your environment. So again, I just wanted to mention that because after working with them, I was very happy that they've been able to help us to be able to help facility owners. So I did want to mention that, but at this time, if anybody has any questions, I'm here to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Annette, and thank you for sharing your story. I think we can all relate. Many of us are in the field for our passions, so it's fantastic to hear people's stories and know that they share that passion. So we appreciate that. We do have a few comments and a few questions. A lot of comments about how this presentation is giving them goosebumps and heebie-jeebies and all of that. And so it is very fascinating information on how easily some of these things can be transmitted. I'm going to ask one or two questions. Before that, I will provide the CEU code for today. I'm going to put this so I don't forget. The CEU code is in the bottom or in the chat box. And I'll also say it out loud. It's C as in cat, 170110. Again, it's in the chat box below, and I'll also provide it here verbally once again. C as in cat, C as in cat, 170110. A couple of questions that we do have. Somebody wanted to know if you could direct them to more studies or information on ozone levels.
Oh, absolutely, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
I have like a whole catalog full of studies. So if you can provide me with the person who's asking that and also their email address, I'll be happy to correspond with them and to send them the information.
Okay, that sounds good. We'll provide that for you. Or if that person wants to reach out directly, I see your email address there. This PowerPoint, somebody asked if this PowerPoint has been recorded so they could share it with their staff. Yes, the PowerPoint has been recorded today. It will be processed within the next 48 hours, and that recording will be sent out to everybody that's on here and also everybody that registered, and it will be housed on our website and in our online classroom for viewing. If you'd like to view that or have a member of your team watch it, anybody can view it after the fact. I'm just scrolling here through the questions. Okay, so this one's a little bit long. I feel that we have good cleaning systems and technology and clean daily, but we have dogs in group play and close contact daily. It seems our cleaning efforts are often futile, as that seems an obvious place where dogs are spreading pathogens. Any tips to prevent infection in group play, particularly for those that are carrying it but are not showing symptoms?
Yes, absolutely. And that's a great question, by the way, and I'm glad that she shared that. So again, because of us constantly staying on top of research and also studies, so we found that like even our upper air units, we have people using the units within the HVAC system, which is great for pathogen control. Problem is just like she said, if they're in play groups and they're going to be running around and playing, they're going to be expelling a lot more pathogens. So we do have upper air units to where we can take immediate action to get those pathogen numbers down to where we can kill them on contact, and we don't have to wait for the air to circulate through the ventilation system. So that is something we hear about a lot, but the people that have actually installed them, we have worked with people. We have a proper sizing again. So upper air units, by far, I would recommend them in every play group. They have been very successful.
Great, thank you. There was a comment earlier just appreciating the fact that you're talking about sizes of facilities and appropriateness for systems. People found that information to be very helpful. Somebody is asking if we were interested in prices. Is that on your website, and also recommended uses for your system? Where do you recommend that they inquire about pricing and recommended uses?
Yeah, again, thank you for that question. So we do get some comments like, why are your prices not listed? We do that intentionally. And the reason being is because we don't know what they need. So for UV to be working again effectively and properly sized, we need to know more about the person's facility. So just so you know, when we do sizing, it's all free. So you can call us and we go through a list of questions. We evaluate your facility. It does not cost you a dime, and we will tell you what we would recommend. And then we work together to find out, because here's the thing. With UV, we don't want to oversize your facility and just throw a bunch of UV in there and say, okay, here's your bill. Because if you put too much in, you're paying for more than what you need. But if we undersize it and we have people picking out the units they do and don't want, and it doesn't work, then it's not going to do any of us any good. So again, for pricing, it's going to depend on what really equipment you need and making sure that we're effectively treating the areas that you want. So if you call us, again, it's free. We would be more than happy to work with you, and we would be happy to give you a quotation at that time.
Okay. Along those same lines, we do have a question. We actually have a number of people PAC certified in Canada. Do you service Canada?
We do. We actually are. Pet Therapy is international as well as domestically. So we have quite a few facilities in Canada that we're working with currently.
All right, that's great. I'm just scrolling through to make sure I got everything. The questions box is a little small. All right, I think that is all of our questions. Annette, again, thank you so much for putting this together. Thanks for overcoming the bump in the road with last time. We're so happy to have this webinar and this information here today to help to keep pets safe, happy, and healthy in pet care centers. If you have any questions regarding the information provided today, feel free to reach out to Annette. In addition, if you have any questions about PAC and how to become PAC certified, please feel free to reach out via our website or our email address, info@paccert.org. In addition, don't forget about those study groups. That's something that's fairly new. So if you would like a community of people to have that study group with, feel free to reach out, and our friends on those Facebook study groups will be happy to welcome you. Annette, thank you again so much. Any final word here before I end the recording?
Other than just thanking everybody for attending and thanking them so much for what they do, because we just know how important it is for safe environments for animals and for them to take enough time to really be reaching out to learn about this. So thank you all very much for coming today.
Fantastic. Again, that CEU code is C as in cat, C as in cat, 170110. Thank you all for your attendance, and I'm now going to stop that recording. Have a great day.